In the initial press release, it said that a neighbor contacted authorities. And we wanted to know, why did the neighbor call? Who was the neighbor? And, what did the neighbors say?
Yeah.
And how did they come to the conclusion that Suzanne supposedly went on a bike ride and just never came home? Did she see Suzanne, or did he or she see Suzanne going on the bike ride? Did they actually, know Suzanne was specifically going on a bike ride at that certain time? And so we tried to speak with the neighbors, and we did speak with one neighbor who, she just answered the door and just said, "Thanks for what you're doing, but I don't want to say anything."
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay. And walking up to that person's house, which is they're right in front of the Morphew's house.
Yeah.
You could see there's like a picnic bench. And I mean, it's from what people have told me that were there when Barry Morphew recorded the plea. They told me that was where he did it, at the neighbor's house, on the picnic table, in front of the creek. And so we knew we were at the right house.
Yeah.
And so after that, what do we do?
So after she said she didn't want to talk, which we respect, so we left, and as we were pulling out, her husband was coming down the road and kind of turned around when he realized we were leaving their house. And so we stopped, and he pulled up next to us and was just basically asking why we were there, and we kind of explained to him that
he was really nice.
Yeah. And we were just kind of explaining to him that we were there because, we knew they were neighbors, and just trying to see if they knew anything and if they were in fact the ones that called about Suzanne.
And he did tell us that. I said, how did that conversation go? How did that call go? And he said, we called the non-emergency number for the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office and reported a, what was it called? A welfare check.
Yes.
And so it sounded like they just wanted to know if Suzanne was okay. And that's what was reported.
Because I believe one of the daughters said that she couldn't get a hold of her mom. And so she asked the neighbor to go just check and see if she was home. So that's why they initially just did it as a welfare type thing, just because they weren't sure what was going on.
And then talking to Barry myself, I asked him, how did the whole bike story happen? Did you ask the neighbor to go look if Suzanne's bike was there, or if it was gone, or, and he said, yeah, I might have said something like that. And I said, okay. And so, and I do understand, I think that Barry stayed because their house was under investigation until May 26th.
Yeah.
That
almost a little over 2 weeks.
Yeah, that him and his family had to stay somewhere, the daughters. And so I know a lot of those neighbors opened up their homes, and a lot of the church members gave food, and the firefighters, they helped search. And I mean, they weren't involved in the actual law enforcement search. They were just involved with Barry's search that he had with some of his friends. So after we interviewed Jeffrey Puckett, what do? We went to the sheriff's office, correct?
Multiple times, yes. Just even throughout that day, we went to try and talk to Speezy because, like we mentioned, he'd only done the one interview at the very beginning, just a few days after she was reported missing, and then it was pretty silent after that.
This was in September, right? When we talked.
I believe so.
It was either end of August or beginning of September when we talked to Puckett, and it was like 2 months without any information from the sheriff's office. So we were like, are you guys still searching? Has Suzanne been found? We just wanted to kind of know the basics, like how many tips have they gotten, things like that. And remember when we first went into the sheriff's office, what did those ladies say to us?
They said that he wasn't going to be releasing any information, and that if he was, it would be in the form of a press release, so he wasn't going to talk to anybody. Or the one time we went, he just wasn't there. That was all we got, was that, oh, he's not here right now, or he's not in. But I just thought it was interesting because we both noticed right when we walked in, there were no missing flyers anywhere, right, when you first walked in, which we thought was kind of a big deal because they were the ones covering this, and it was a pretty big deal in the town. So for them to have no flyers or any sort of indication that people should be on the lookout for her was very eye-opening.
Mm-hmm. And in this trip, we also went again to George Davis's house to try to see if they were doing any more civilian searches, and he wasn't there again, right?
Yeah.
And in between going to the sheriff's office and going to George Davis' house, this was after the family had moved into a condo in Poncha Springs. So we decided, hey, let's go to the condo, see if Barry's there. We can talk with him to see if they're doing any more searches. So we go there. No one answers, right? The first time.
The first time nobody was home, yeah.
Yeah. And then the second time, what happened?
The second time we went, one of the daughters answered the door.
Is your dad home?
Which we both agreed was a little interesting because initially when she answered, she was very, upbeat and very friendly, and, we kind of just asked if her dad was home, and she said, oh no, I'm sorry, he'll be back later or something. And then once you explained who we were and why we were there, total flip the switch. She was a completely different person and wanted nothing to do with us.
I remember she slammed the door in our face, which it's okay. She doesn't know who we are.
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't have a relationship with us at all. So, and she was trying to protect herself and protect her dad. And we only came to the house just to talk to Barry.
Yeah, we just wanted to see if he would say anything to us in person.
And you were shocked when we were just saying, what exactly did we say? We said, hey, we're just here wanting to help find your mom.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the upcoming search that your uncle is doing? Yeah. And it didn't matter to her. She just wanted us to get out of the front door.
Yeah.
Out of the
She did
porch.
not want us there at all.
Yeah. And so I immediately texted Barry and I said, hey, I just want to let you know I went by your house or your condo and spoke with your daughter. Just wanted you to know that that's what happened.
Just so he was aware, so if she mentioned it later, he wasn't surprised by it, and that way you were being very upfront with him as well.
Yeah, and he responded saying something like, I want you to, I don't want the girls to be involved, or, didn't want that. And I said, I didn't want that either. I was just trying to look for you, talk to you. And so I asked him, when were you going to be home? I don't think he responded.
Yeah.
So we just told him in a text, like, we'll be back later.
Yeah.
We do want to talk with you. So I think that's when we go back to the sheriff's office. Still
a second
nothing.
time to see if he had come back in.
And they just told me he's not in the office.
Yeah.
So then we go back over to the condo again, and we're just sitting in our car.
Yep.
I'm in the driver's seat, you're in the passenger, and we are just parked outside of the condo. And I had texted Barry, hey, I'm outside. I would really like to talk with you. And I could see in the windows, because the windows were all open, I could see Barry was watching TV.
Yeah. We could see that he was home, so that's why we knew we could text him.
And so I texted him, I said, hey, I don't want to, scare your daughter. I don't want to, cause any more stress to your daughter or anything like that. I just want to talk with you. could you come outside?
Yeah,
and
because
talk
we
with
wanted to do it outside to make sure that she had no part in it, and that way
Mhm.
it was strictly between us and him. Because that's the only reason we went there. We just wanted to talk to him.
And then what happened?
So then it got a little interesting. You had asked him to come outside, and I don't think he responded or said anything. And then all of a sudden we saw...
It was like between 2 to 5 minutes after sending that text.
Yeah.
We see the door open.
Yes, and then his daughter came outside and immediately came to the door of the car and told us that we needed to leave because we were bothering them, and we were essentially looking through their windows at them and doing something we shouldn't be, I guess. And it was very aggressive, and you can tell, she just really did not want us to be there, even though we were on the street, so it's not like we were standing in their front yard or anything. But
we were inside our car.
Yeah,
We
she was
just
the one that
rolled down
came
the
out and
window.
confronted us. Yeah.
And I remember telling her, I am speaking with your dad. I have been speaking with your dad. And it was like she had no idea that. And I even showed her the text messages between me and him proving that we were having a conversation. And because she was like, oh, he's not going to talk to you. And I was like, I've been talking to him, you know.
Because you made it very clear and told her that even when we came by earlier, we didn't mean to scare her, and we didn't even really want to talk to her. We were just looking for her dad, and that's when she said, well, he's not going to talk to you. And you're like, well, he is, because we're texting right now already. And she, just seemed completely shocked by that. She was very unaware that was even happening.
Yeah. And then she goes, I'll go get him if you want to talk. And I said, okay, great.
Yeah.
So she goes, fetches Barry, and then Barry comes and talks to us. How did that kind of explain how that went? Because you got a front row seat to what was going on.
So she was very upset the first time she came to the car. The second time, when she came back out with Barry, she was very emotional. She began crying and screaming at us and telling us that we needed to leave their family alone, that we were bothering them. And then Barry immediately says, look what you're doing to my daughter. And I think for me, that was very eye-opening because he knew we were outside. He knew we were there. He knew we wanted to talk to him. And yet it seemed as though he sent his daughter out to confront us. So then when he said, look what you're doing to her, it was kind of like, we don't want to talk to her though. We're not trying to do anything with her. We only wanted to talk to you. And so it became a very loud, Lauren's trying to explain why we're there. The daughter is yelling at us. Barry's just kind of standing there. I don't really remember him ever saying anything to us really other than that, look what you're doing to my daughter.
And we specifically went to his house to see if he was going to participate in the search.
Yeah.
If he knew about the search, if they had already done some searches, and when they did it and where they did it. And I think we were just in shock of what had happened.
Yes, we were not expecting that at all. When she said she was going in to get him,
I thought she was just gonna have him come outside by himself.
Same.
I did not think she was gonna come back out and, say what she did.
Yes.
Would you please quit upsetting my daughter?
I didn't mean to upset her at
I
all.
have to ask you to leave or we're going to call the police, okay?
Okay. Well, I was
She's
texting.
a 17-year-old minor
No,
that lost her mother.
I understand
Okay?
that. I was just
Settle down. Settle down. Settle down.
I was just texting your father to
Just-
talk with him.
Lauren,
I didn't want to talk with
Lauren,
you. I
listen.
wanted to talk to you.
Look what you're doing.
I want to help you.
If you want to go talk to the Mormons and let them put on their publicity
No,
stunt,
I don't want to do that.
since they haven't talked to my wife in 3 years, none of them,
I don't-
and now they're doing this.
I just wanted to talk to you, Barry.
So after that, we leave.
Mm-hmm.
After that, and we see she leaves, the daughter, later.
Yes.
She was, I think, heading to the gym.
Yeah.
And so when she left, we were like, well, let's see if Barry will talk with us when she's gone, because that's why we're here. And we went back to the door and knocked on it. We could hear the TV running.
Well, we knew he was home because he never left.
Yeah.
None of his cars moved. It was just the daughter. And obviously we knew what car she had, so we saw her drive off. But he never left. So we knew he was home.
And we started chatting about our conversation with Jeff Puckett outside the door. We were talking loud enough that he could have easily heard us.
Yeah.
Because all the windows were open. It was just the blind. So he could have heard our conversation. We were just saying, like, we would like to hear his side of what happened that weekend because of what now Jeffrey Puckett was telling us. And still, I knocked, I texted him, I even called him, left a message. I think even in the message I apologized for what had happened outside, saying that's not why we came here, we just wanted to talk with you, Barry, and you know, we would still like to talk with you about what we learned from Jeffrey Puckett, just to get both sides, obviously, of the story. And so we just left. We kind of just...
Well, actually, if you remember, so we kind of parked a little bit further away from the house, just so, again, he didn't feel like we were sitting in front of it. And we saw the daughter's car coming back. Do you remember that? Very shortly after she had left...
And we had called.
Yes, and made it apparent to Barry that we were there again. Her car came pulling back in.
And it
like almost like he said, hey, they're back, and she turned around and came back, is what it seemed like, at least.
Well, it's definitely not enough time for her to have a full workout at the gym.
Yes, definitely not.
But who knows? Maybe she did. I don't know. On the way home, we kind of just evaluated that conversation and what had transpired and how that escalated so quickly and why. Because we were literally sitting in our cars. Hadn't, you know.
For me, it was, you know, I'm just processing the fact that I had just met him in person to some degree, and like seeing him for the first time and kind of being in that almost face-to-face moment. You more so, because he was on your side of the car, but there was that aspect as well, just thinking like, oh my gosh, this is actually him. You know, you've talked to him on the phone, but actually seeing him in person was definitely an experience as well.
And I remember when we first pulled up and was, you know, parked outside their house, and we were not even in front of their house. We were like on the side street.
Yeah, like towards the back.
They lived on a corner.
Yeah.
And so I remember when they saw us there, before one of the daughters came out to talk with us, she had closed all the blinds.
Yes,
remember?
I think it was after you had initially said, hey,
and texted Barry,
we're outside. Yeah, then you could see all of the blinds start shutting.
Yeah. And I remember seeing Barry through the window, and he looked, I think he was shirtless.
I think so.
And when he came outside, he was still like working to button up his shirt.
Yeah. He was upset because we were more focused on him and not the fact that Suzanne's family hasn't talked to her or seen her in 3 years.
He specifically said 3 years.
Yes, and implying that the Mormons were putting on some sort of publicity stunt and, you know, making it seem like they cared about her, but they haven't talked to her in 3 years, and he was more focused on that than why we were there for him and what was happening with his daughter.
And I remember specifically after that conversation, I was already in conversation with Andy Mormon, who was in a couple weeks going to come to Salida and do this huge search. So I said, hey, we need to have a conversation tomorrow. I just spoke with Barry. He said some things. I'm going to check with you. You know, there's always two sides to every story. So I wanted to find out if it was true that the Mormons hadn't seen or talked to Suzanne in 3 years. And that next morning, I did a Zoom or FaceTime call, I believe, with Andy Mormon, and I asked him, when was the last time you spoke to Suzanne? You know, he told me. And then, when was the last time you saw Suzanne. And he said the last time he spoke to Suzanne was for her birthday, which was just the Friday before Mother's Day, the April 30th. And he had actually sent her a video wishing her happy birthday, which he sent me. And then I asked him, when was the last time you saw Suzanne? And he said it was, I think around Christmas time in Florida with their dad. And I said, okay. And he sent me pictures of that time, that trip too. And I said, Barry told us that you were doing this search as a publicity stunt. What would you say to that? So after doing the interview with Andy Mormon the next morning, within 10 minutes, Barry Morphew calls me and he says, I need to apologize for my daughter and what happened yesterday. And I said, okay. And again, I told him that the only reason why we went to the condo was to talk with you. I wanted to talk with you about what Jeffrey Puckett had told us, and then also about this upcoming search that your brother-in-law is conducting. And that's when the hour and a half conversation I had with him, where by the end of the conversation, he was like, he told me, that he would be at the vigil, that he would be at the search, and that he would do a sit-down interview with me on camera. Because every time I asked Barry, he was wanting me to he wanted to give me information, and he wanted to do the interviews with me. And I said, okay, let's do it right now on Zoom or FaceTime. And he didn't want to do that. Anyways, so my whole day kind of switched into, okay, so now I have this interview with Barry. We got to change our plan, because we were planning on doing a story about the upcoming search, and now with this interview with, Barry Morphew, it had changed. So after that, we did a couple more stories about the upcoming search, and then you went to the search, you covered the vigil, and that was kind of all you got to cover during that week.
Yeah, the vigil was one of the final things that I covered aside from, the recent events, but that one was really nice because I actually got to talk to Andy, and I had only seen, the interviews that you had done with him via Zoom or whatever it was, virtually. So it was just nice to actually get to talk to him in person, and I kind of asked him, with the search happening, what it was like coming to Salida and seeing all of the support that was just pouring for Suzanne, and people that had never heard of her, didn't know her at all, were coming out to help with this. And he started to get a little emotional because I think he himself was just overwhelmed by how much love was actually out there and how many people genuinely wanted to help him find his sister.
That's really cool. I hope to actually get to meet Andy in person someday, and some of other members of Suzanne's family and close friends. I know what has happened has impacted just so many lives.
Yes.
Here in Colorado, in Indiana, across the country, and even the globe. I think Suzanne's story really hit home to people and really changed people's perspective about a lot of things. So I'll never forget when I called you Wednesday morning and told you that there was an arrest and that it was, in fact, Barry Morphew.
Yeah, I was at the gym, and as soon as you said that and we found out that we were being sent to it, I immediately left. I was like, I'm rushing home. I'll get ready as soon as I can. Like, we got to get out there.
Yeah. What was your take on, I mean, it's been 12 months.
Yeah.
And this whole time we got little information, which I think, yes, I pressured law enforcement, but
a lot.
I wanted to know, updates. I mean, that's my job, to inform people, and I wanted to know as much as I could, but I also know that we don't want to hurt the investigation at all. And so you were at this final press conference, this is when they made the announcement of the arrest, and you were at the first press conference. What was, I mean, obviously there was there was an arrest, there was, a suspect named, and that they confirmed that, Suzanne, they believed Suzanne is no longer alive.
Yeah.
But from the first press conference to this recent press conference, what did you think of Sheriff Speasy and his demeanor and what he said? What was your reaction to that?
Well, it was definitely nice knowing that they had come to the conclusion that it was Barry, that they had actually been able to name a suspect. It was definitely unfortunate hearing that they had no longer ruled it as a missing person, that at that point it did become, that they were looking for a body. That definitely hit me a little harder than I was expecting, because I think everybody, whether you were really involved or not, was still holding out hope that she was somewhere and that we would find her alive somewhere. So that was a little hard to hear. But the two press conferences, even though there was a suspect name, I feel like we're still very similar in the fact that we didn't get a lot of information. And even though this time we were allowed to ask more questions and people, knew a little bit more about it at this point, they still couldn't tell us a whole lot. And so I think that was still frustrating once again, because you go an entire year with very, very little information. If he did send out a press release, it didn't contain a whole lot of updates. So I feel like this most recent press conference still left a lot of unanswered questions, which was unfortunate, because obviously we had a lot of questions and a lot of people want to know more information, even if, like you said, it's as simple as how many tips have been called, where have you searched, where are you searching next, like just really basic information that they still couldn't tell us. But I did feel like from the first one to now that Speasy was a lot more confident in the investigation than in the beginning, which makes sense, because obviously at the start you're not fully aware of what you're working with and there's still a lot of unknowns. But I feel like he was a lot more confident in what he was saying and the decision that they had made arresting Barry and kind of where they were going next, but still a lot of very open,
unanswered questions.
Yes.
For sure. There was probably twice as much media and community members at the second one, or even quadruple amount.
Yeah, the first one was primarily local stations and even a few from Denver that had come from up north. But yeah, in the beginning it was, just a missing woman at that point. So there was only a few of the local stations covering it, but this time there were a lot of, the bigger networks like Dateline and a lot of other media outlets that were there, because it's been a whole year, and the fact that he was arrested, pretty close to Mother's Day on the 1-year anniversary, I think was a very big deal as well.
Time will tell as far as if he will take a plea or what his defense will bring to the table, as far as how did Suzanne die, or do they think that she is still alive somewhere? There's so many unknowns as far as, what happened that weekend, Mother's Day weekend.
I think the biggest thing for people right now too is there's a lot of people that want to know what the evidence is and all of that, but there's still a lot of people that really just want to know where Suzanne is. I think finding her body is such an important piece right now, because it gives closure to the family, it gives closure to the town of Salida, and just knowing that she's not still just out there somewhere. And I feel like that's a really important aspect. And so hopefully if Barry is found guilty in the end of all of this, that he does say where she is. Mm-hmm. There is that sense of closure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've been to the town, how many times now? 5 times?
At least, yeah.
What was your take as far as during this 12 months, from the first week after Suzanne went missing till now? What was your feeling of the community, and what were they talking about?
There's a lot of support, and like I said earlier, a lot of people that didn't know her at all but wanted to help. There were missing posters on doors everywhere. There were massive banners that were made and hung on fences and, you know, hanging from buildings. And it was almost like every turn you made, there was something with her face on it to make people very aware that this was important to them. And I feel like even with talking about the press conference, the first time it was primarily just a few media outlets. This time though, there were a lot of community members that came out to hear that. And I think that's a true testament to how important Suzanne really is, whether you knew her or not. And I think people needed that sense of closure as well, hearing an official say what was going on. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that a lot of times in the news, you hear that someone's missing, and a lot of people think about it for a little bit, and then it just kind of fades away. And I feel like with this one, because the community never gave up, you never gave up, people in Indiana that are her friends and family, like everybody kept this story alive. And I think that made a big deal, because she wasn't just another missing person where you see their face on a TV screen and, you know, you don't really think twice about it. A lot of people in Salida and Colorado in general stepped up and made sure that people didn't forget about her. And I think that played a huge role in what happened on Wednesday.
I think also the circumstances surrounding the case, as far as it happening on a holiday.
Specific to who she is as a mom.
Yeah, you know, Mother's Day, like the day that you're supposed to be with your family and celebrating your mom. I think that played a huge role in it kind of blowing up and a lot of people wanting to know what happened to this mother on Mother's Day. And then I think also just who Suzanne is as a daughter, as a mom, as a sister, as a friend. I think that really drew even more people to know, to want to find out answers and want to know what happened. And then, you know, the searches that drew people to help. And a lot of people came from across the country to help. And I think,
I mean, people are still searching, even though
yeah,
Barry's been arrested, people still aren't giving up. Like that
yeah,
just shows their dedication.
We're talking to people that are still searching in mines and searching, you know, in the creeks and the rivers around that area. And people are still calling me saying, hey, maybe she's here. Has that area been looked at? And I think it's a true testament to humanity that we care for one another and we don't want people to disappear, you know. So I just wanted to say, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, but I appreciate all the work that you've done, and I'm sure everyone else does. And you have done an amazing job on this.
It's been an interesting 12 months.
Yes.
And
definitely.
You've been there through it all with me. You've been interested in finding out answers like I've been interested in finding out answers, and it's nice to have a coworker that has the same enthusiasm for a story and that drive to find out answers. So I want to say thank you to you.
Thank you.
So I'll be posting some videos that if I can release some of the interviews that we did in the raw form. So please tune into that. Thanks so much for watching, guys. And again, Suzanne is still missing. Her body has not been recovered, so continue to raise awareness and keep searching for Suzanne.